So we've all been there. You decide that you want to buy a pair of wireless earbuds. It's 2021, it's time to get with the times, it's time to go wireless. So you buy a pair, you order them online, they get to your door, and you put them in and you're so excited, but oh no, they don't sound very good. In fact, they sound kind of awful. In fact, you kind of hate them. And so you think to yourself, okay, I'll just keep listening, and after a while they're gonna start to sound better. And so you do, and they don't. And then your ears start to hurt, and you're like, I need to go to the doctor. And so you go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, your ears are bleeding. And you ask them, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen to me? And the doctor tells you, we're gonna have to amputate both of your ears, and you're never gonna have ears again. And you're like, how could this have been avoided? And he's like, you just should have gone to Major Hi-Fi and read more about wireless earbuds and watched Luke's videos, and maybe you wouldn't be in this position. And you just think to yourself, oh my gosh, don't you just hate when that happens? Hello everyone, welcome back to Major Hi-Fi, I'm Luke. Today we're going to be talking about wireless earbuds. In fact, we're going to be talking about the best wireless earbuds of 2021, the current year that we are in. So let's go down the line, talk about the strengths, the weaknesses, how they compare to one another, and maybe which one is going to be best for you. Before I dive into all of these, let's address the elephant in the room, which are AirPods, more specifically AirPods Pros. You've probably considered buying a pair before, you've maybe used a pair before, maybe you own a pair right now. They're definitely an earbud a lot of people know about or have used or have owned. And so I'm going to use those as a starting point of reference. They're definitely a controversial earbud. People have some very hot takes on them. You know, a lot of people think that they are really horrid and that they sound terrible and that any other earbud is better than that. I can't say I totally agree. I'm probably gonna get flamed for saying this. A lot of people have them and they get the job done, like they're fine. I don't know if that totally nixes my credibility. But that being said, AirPods are not a one size fits all. There are many options on the market that are just as good. Some are better, arguably, for different tastes, different ears, different people, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So here's the deal with wireless earbuds, especially the ones that are more popular, which all of these are pretty popular. They tend to have a somewhat similar sound. They don't sound, like they all sound different, but they follow a similar pattern in terms of having a more neutral sound signature with a boosted high end and a boosted bass. Boosting the low end and the high end allows the headphone to have a more exciting cinematic sound, and then keeping the mid-range more neutral and just the overall tonality not super inflected allows them to be very versatile and work for a large variety of genres and styles so that they can cater to a large number of listeners. And that's just going to be the case with a lot of these. They're not going to be extremely particular, and they're not going to be super extreme in too many areas besides the bass, because we know that the masses love a lot of bass, and so people are going to beef that up a lot. So I thought I would start with the EVA 2020 by Final Audio. These run for $249, which is about standard for this list. This is, of the whole list, the one that reminds me the most of Apple headphones. However, it does have a fair number of things that make it quite different. What makes it similar is the way that it's tuned. It has a similar kind of neutral, very, not flat sound, but pretty tightened up, not super intense in any particular area type of tuning. We get a really bright high end to add a nice shine to all of our music. And then the low end is very present, but it's not over the top. It's pretty controlled to keep it from being too polarizing of a sound. So it's a very forgiving earbud. It is much wider sounding than Apple AirPods by a fair amount. It definitely sounds like your Apple headphones have been fanned out super wide, and you're gonna get a much more immersive feel from these most likely. So it's a very snappy, very crisp headphone. This is maybe one of the crispiest, if not the crispiest, of the whole lineup here is the EVA. So if you want a nice, bright, super tight sound, this is the go-to. It might not be the bassiest of all of these. We'll get to that in terms of how it compares later on. But this definitely excels in terms of being very crisp and very detailed and extremely wide. You might not actually be able to find a true wireless earbud quite as wide sounding as this one on the market right now. These do come in a number of different colors. We happen to have the absolute loudest one you can buy, which is all red and yellow. The case is very tight closing, like it's almost a little hard to open, which is the only complaint I would have with these. So the strengths on these are definitely how wide and large they sound, and the weaknesses are just that they're a bit bright in the looks. There are other colors available. You can buy them in black. I wouldn't mind a less plasticky look. All of these are made of plastic, but some of them do a better job covering it up or adding some sort of metal embellishments. This one is purely all plastic all over, and it's very bright colors on a lot of the models. It doesn't look like cheap or anything, but they don't look like maybe quite the price point, but they do sound like it, and that is what matters at the end of the day. All right, so now we have the Sennheiser Momentum 2. This is a longtime favorite of many earbud fiends. We can take these out of the case real quick, get a quick look at them. As you can see, they've got a fairly standard, nondescript look. We've got a nice, very shiny backing going on here. And a fairly just, standard matte black look. They're very, very comfortable, very simple, no frills fit going on, which is what you want to see, and a nice kind of luxurious, shiny look going on the back here. And then this charging case is a nice, fabric kind of coating on the outside, and then the rest of it is just a hard shell plastic case. But this fabric does make it feel a little bit more luxurious, which I like. It's got a very similar high-end brightness, shininess to the Eva, and by extension to, say, AirPods, for example. However, the Momentum 2 has you covered on bass like way more. We're gonna get a lot more low end from this one, both in terms of like punchiness and in terms of just rumbling, booming, like big low end. It's pretty beefed up. And these are gonna be a lot of a warmer, kind of damper sound in many areas. They're not gonna have the more forward mid-range you hear on Apple headphones, and they're not gonna have that super extra tight kind of more controlled bass sound you get on, say the Eva, for example. So we're gonna get an overall more warm, booming sound from these. When I say booming, I don't mean like it's totally obliterated by bass. There is a bassier earbud on this list, which we're gonna get to, but it's definitely gonna give you a healthy serving of it, and if you like bassy music, this definitely has you covered. It can deliver that all the way. A little bit of a negative of having a bass response like this is that we don't achieve quite the width we get on an earbud like the Eva that's a little bit more light on its feet. This is going to be just a tad bit weighed down and kind of grounded by the bass response, not excessively, but it is something to be mindful of if you are someone who wants width and largeness and expansiveness over everything. But otherwise, you're not like totally sacrificing it just for bass. These are still a plenty wide sounding earbud, but maybe a little bit more just standard width. So the strength of these is definitely how punchy and bassy they are. That is where I think these hit a home run. The weakness is that they're just not super like snappy. There's not much bite to them, which for some people might be great if you have like more sensitive ears, but other people might want a little bit more boosting in vocals and other sort of mid-range elements. All right, so next up we have the CX, which is actually below the price range of the rest of these, but it feels necessary to mention when talking about the Momentum 2 because it looks very similar, and it's also from Sennheiser, of course, as you can see, and it runs for $129, so it is a solid amount less than the Momentum 2, which makes it quite appealing as an alternative, especially if you don't want to spend as much money. But a lot of people I know have been wondering, well, what am I going to be losing or missing out on if I'm not going to be spending the full $249 for the Momentum 2? What does the CX get me for less money? As you can see, they've got a bit more of a smaller case than the Momentum 2, and they've got a bit more of a square-ish shape, very just not quite as flashy. They don't have that silver backing, but they just, they look very, very nondescript, like not gonna stick out at all, which is probably what you want. So yeah, just all black, all matte black, not much to say about the look on these. And the case is the same thing, all matte black. Now the CX does not feel $120 cheaper than the Momentum 2. It feels more like $50 cheaper, which is really nice. It does sort of feel like a more toned down, less grand version of the Momentum 2, so we have a little bit less intense of a bass response, not quite as shiny of a high end, and their width is not quite as far reaching as we're gonna get from the Momentum 2. But honestly, if you're really not willing to spend $249, if that's like way above your budget, you're not gonna get totally left in the dust for buying these. Like, they're still a really good deal, and they're a very viable alternative to the Momentum 2. If you want the best of the best from Sennheiser, you're gonna wanna go here. But if you're willing to make some compromises, it's not a total cop-out to buy these. They still deliver a really great sound quality, and they are fairly similar to the Momentum 2, so definitely not out of the question to consider the CX as an alternative. All right, so next we have the Bowers & Wilkins PI5. I did a video on these quite a while ago, and some of y'all did not like it. I was like really tired that day or something, and my voice was really gravelly or something, and people were like, why are you lowering your voice? Why do you talk like that? I don't make any effort to change my voice. Some days it's just a little bit more lower. I think it's cute. But if my morning voice is just too much for your ears, then like, I'm so sorry about that. My bad. Anyways, I'll link to that video. You can watch it. You can decide for yourself, let me know. Anyways, the PI5 by Bowers & Wilkins, a well-established company, very well liked in the audio community. This also runs for $249. It is the little brother to the PI7, which is one of the best true wireless you can buy, but that runs for like $400, $500, so it's another story. But like I said, watch that video. It's on the PI7 and the PI5. So if you want to know more about that, then click the link in the description. We can take these out of the case. Yeah, they look quite similar actually to the Momentum 2. You've got a similar shiny kind of backing going on here. These have a little bit more of an elongated shape going on, that kind of ovular shape. Which actually makes these have some of the best comfort for me because they really fill the ear. And I enjoy something that really has a little bit of extra bulk on it to fill up my ears and make them feel very snug. Is this focusing? I cannot tell. And then we just have a pretty standard plastic case. I guess they can't really make these cases out of anything besides plastic, but I enjoy this kind of glossier type of finish that's on the top here. That's more matte plastic to me. Just feels a little bit too cheap, but overall, I mean, it's not a big deal. Like, you'll get over it if it feels a little cheap, right? You'll be fine. But yeah, the PI5, so I've talked about how bassy the Momentum 2 was. The PI5 is even bassier by a fair amount. Like, this is gonna have everything beat in terms of its bass response, not only because it is the strongest, but because it combines the best of both worlds in terms of it has the kind of tightness and control and just handling of the bass on the EVA 2020, which is just super precise, but it has the depth and the impact of the bass on the Momentum 2. It kind of combines both of the sort of best qualities of the different respective bass responses on these two and just makes them into this very beautiful, super defined, very intense, but just so clean of a bass response. So these are like incredible if you want a lovely, lovely low-end sound, which might make you think, okay, well then I guess that these are the ones to get. But as much as the bass may seem like that is gonna make these the best for you, and maybe it would if bass is all you care about, these do have a treble and a mid-range that is not going to be for everyone. So these are a bit darker than the rest on the list. They do have a fair amount of brightness in parts of the high end. They do get some thin layers of shininess. They have a more rounded kind of, like I said, dampened edge to them, which for a more sensitive ear could be good. But if you want that very shiny, glistening sound, these are not really going for that. They're definitely more focused on the lower frequencies, both in terms of the bass and the mid-range. They just want to focus more on those really warm, you know, sort of more like impactful areas, but not so much on those really snappy, kind of shiny, textural, upper textural areas. So the strengths for these for me were how punchy they were. They also had, like I said, that really great low-end response that also achieves a much better width in terms of its bass than most of these do. And it also does have a very smoothed out, warmed up high end, like I said. The weaknesses are just that it's not the most crisp sounding. It's just not the brightest. The brightness level of this is a bit lower, which makes it a little bit more of a particular sound. But the smoothed out, warmed up sound on the PI5 will, of course, really hit the spot for plenty of people, and I know it has because this has gotten a lot of really, really good feedback. Hey guys, Luke here. Just wanted to remind you that if you're enjoying this video, it would be so great, so swell if you could give us a like and subscribe. We could really use your support, especially if you're gonna watch our videos. Just go on ahead and click subscribe. I see a lot of you are watching and are not subscribing. All right, so next up we have Noble Audio's Falcon Pro. This runs for $329. It's a little bit more cash than the rest of the list. Do I think that that means that it's overpriced? No, not generally. I think that the unfortunate truth of headphones is that certain sounds are harder to achieve at certain levels. If you want, you know, a certain quality in a headphone and you want it to be done well, it might not be quite as easy to achieve. You know, the parts you use, all that might be different. You know, they're in the same price range. They're priced a little bit higher though, and that's not maybe because they're like going to be better. You're not going to be generally getting like, you know, math 70, 330, 80. You're not gonna be getting like $80 of extra quality every time you spend $80 more. You might just be getting a certain sound that cost $80 more to achieve, and if that's your taste, then you're just out of luck. You're just gonna have to spend a little bit more money to get what you want at the quality you want. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, then leave a comment and I'll try to better explain that to you as to why some headphones cost more than others. Take a look at these. They have a much more sort of interesting look to the case. We've just got this metallic blue going on. It's a bit more of a square shape, although the other ones have very long rectangular cases. And then these have a nice metallic blue backing on them, as you can see. And then they of course just have the standard matte black body on them. A lot of these have very similar fits, as you can tell. It's a pretty standard, standardized thing, the way that earbuds fit these days for the most part. And so yeah, the Falcon Pro do have probably a little bit more of a different sound than the rest of this list. They have a much more forward mid-range. It is definitely a more defined kind of bringing out vocals, bringing out keys. Anything in that area is going to definitely be accentuated with the mid-range on these, which is hard to do without creating a very harsh, resonant ringing sound, and the Falcon Pro do a good job of bringing out those sort of high mid frequencies, but doing it in a very refined, cleaned up way, but still adding a little bit of saturation and coloring to kind of bring things to life a bit. So they've got a nice bite to them. It does remind me once again of AirPods, of Apple headphones, which do have a fairly defined mid-range on them, which makes them, very versatile in many ways. And also, once again, just is going to bring forward elements in that area that some people want that extra attention given to. The Falcon also leans into that kind of smoothed out, warmed up treble, somewhat similar to the PI5, but the Falcon sits a little bit more in the middle of smooth / warm and crisp / detailed. It's a bit more of a balanced kind of just blending of the two different styles as opposed to just being dark or bright. In terms of how wide they sound, they have a width that is comparable to the Eva, which is still probably going to be the widest sounding of all of these, but this does come pretty darn close to it. Its bass response was nothing that really jumped out to me. It wasn't the same type of boosting I got from the rest of a lot of these. But it definitely was a pretty neutral, still well-handled bass response, just not really trying to stick out much. It was just, part of the bigger picture on this one, as opposed to really trying to accentuate those low-end frequencies. And this could definitely be good for someone who doesn't want too much bass, who is easily overwhelmed by a lot of bass. So the strengths for this one were definitely that it had a really nice balanced high-end sound. Like I said, it struck that really good midpoint between warm and crisp. And then I also enjoyed that it had that more forward mid-range as opposed to the more subdued, recessed mid-range we see in a lot of these other wireless earbuds, as cutting the mid-range is a great way to achieve some automatic cleanliness. It's a bit more of a bolder move to push the mid-range forward and still keep that cleaner, high-fidelity sound, but it can be done. And then the kind of weaknesses of this were just that the bass response was maybe not quite as pronounced as maybe it could be. It didn't quite have the impact that maybe you would find on the other ones of these. But that being said, it kind of worked with the rest of the sound on this, as we've got some other things that are being pushed forward instead of the bass, so it didn't overcrowd the sound by keeping the bass a bit more controlled. So yeah, those are, in my opinion, the best Bluetooth earbuds on the market right now. There's a ton of Bluetooth earbuds out there, don't get me wrong, but these ones I think are definitely the top of the line. They're going to do you the best, last you the longest, and sound the most satisfying. And yeah, hopefully they did a good job describing all of these. You can figure out which one is your taste. Let me know if you have any more questions about them, how they compare to other earbuds, how they compare to one another on other levels that I might not have gotten to. And yeah, go buy yourself a good pair of earbuds, because if you don't buy a good pair, things can go very, very wrong. All right, well, I'll be back soon with some more videos and reviews. I will link to Major Hi-Fi's True Wireless ranking tool, where you can compare all of these to many other True Wireless earbuds and headphones. I will see you guys soon, and until next time, happy listening.